So, recording has started. Great. Well, I'm just going to share my screen. So if you can just tell me when you can see that.
Mine, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, all good.
Great. Maggie, did you have something to say? Sorry.
Sorry, I think it's freezing up and I've got a low internet broad bandwidth or something, which is unusual. So if I can't hear some of the things you're saying, so if you are recording it, if you could send it on to that.
I will send you the recording afterwards, Maggie.
Thank you.
Is everyone else okay? Everyone else can hear okay? There's no...
Yeah, so far so good, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's your connection, Maggie.
I think it's
on full bars. I don't know why it keeps saying that, but this message keeps coming up. And anyway, if I disappear, I'll log back on.
Okay.
Maggie, it might be worth resetting your router or something like that, maybe.
Yeah.
It's connected to the strongest router. I've got routers all over my house. Well,
ignore everything I just said. Carry on.
Don't worry.
You want to find yourself, Maggie, you need to find yourself somebody in the house that knows something about communications.
You're so funny, Tim. he's never here, is he?
Okay, guys. Right. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. We are together until 5 o'clock. So the next 3 hours, we'll take a break. We might take a couple depending on whether or not we need a bit more space just to stretch our legs, have a comfort break, but we'll definitely take some breaks. So, but we've got 3 hours together. We've got some great content today that's going to build on what we've already started. So let's get cracking. Today, what we're going to look at as a follow-on from our first session, we're going to look at how we can use insights from the market and use those insights to craft powerful impact statements that we're going to use with customers to kickstart the sales process, okay? And this will build on the rapport that we've already built with them. So we'll just touch back on that, make sure that we're clear on the rapport principles that we covered last time. We're going to look at how we listen intently to customers so that we're really tuning into the conversation and understanding more deeply what they're telling us and what they need. We're going to look at high quality questions and some key principles about how we craft questions. Then we're going to do some exercises around crafting our own questions that are going to help us inform the customer and our business about what's most practical and valuable. And then we're going to look at how we put all that into practice, ready for the next session. So that's today's workshop. So before we get started, just same slide that I shared at the start of the first workshop. I'll just get back into this every time we reconvene. So first and foremost, I'll thank you guys in advance for full attention. So I know there's a lot going on right now. And if you need to take a minute, if there's anything on your mind right now that you think, do you know what, there's a customer you need to call, or there's an action you need to take, or an email you need to respond to, just make a note of it right now. Just take a moment. If there's anything that's on your mind that you think this is going to keep gnawing away during the workshop, just make a note right now. And then at the end of the workshop, you can go straight to that and get it done as soon as we're finished. Or you can do it in a break, but just capture it, because what the evidence shows is when stuff's bubbling around in your mind, it prevents you from focusing and tuning in. So if there is anything, just capture it on a pad, and then you can get to it immediately after today's session. Everything we talk about in our sessions, as you know, is confidential among this group, our group. We will be hosting the recording, but everything we talk about, any customers, any specifics, any details, completely confidential among this group of people. As we go through the content, you may have questions. If you do, just unmute yourself if you are on mute and just say, Justin, can I just check in or ask something about that? And we'll stop and just make sure that we clarify anything that needs clarifying. I hope you'll also start to see this group and these workshops as a safe zone where you can bring anything. You can bring, whether it's a challenge with a customer, whether it's something you're struggling with, you can bring it in the knowledge that it's a safe place to have that discussion. There's no judgment. There's nothing else other than us trying to develop and really help you to move yourself and your customers and the business forward. I've said it already, we will take a break. So we'll take a break at about 3:30 is the plan. If we have to go a little bit earlier than that, we'll do it depending on momentum and how we feel. I'd like it to be as interactive as possible, so I'll be using breakout rooms today on Zoom. You'll understand how they work pretty quickly once we get into that part of the session. I have a strong agenda, so I know exactly what we're covering, so we will stay on track. But as I said before, it's all of our jobs to stay on track. So I'll brief you before you go into the breakout rooms, but please do kind of stick to the brief as we go into those breakout rooms so that you get maximum impact from the discussions. And if there's anything that comes up that we need to capture, I've got my notepad here, so I'll put it in the car park. It means that we capture it, we don't lose it as part of the discussion. It may not be directly relevant to the session, but we'll make sure that there's a way to capture those actions if we need to. Okay, so that kind of gets us into the frame for the session. I'll also invite you to just think, as we're working through each of the principles, as I work through the content, there'll be things that are occurring to you. Make sure you've got a place to capture your key takeaways, because we all process things slightly differently, and that's good. So there'll be things for you, there'll be nuances where you think, you know, that is particularly relevant for either a customer or an opportunity or something you need to think about and develop, but just capture those as we go along. And we have our accountability partners as part of the workshop. So I'll remind you of this every time we reconvene, and we'll also start each session. So shortly we're going to just drop you into your accountability partners, just have a check-in on how you're progressing. So we've got Jamie and Alan working together, we've got Barry and Maggie working together, and Will and Kelly working together. And the idea, remember the idea here, the big idea is that in good organizations, in well-functioning organizations, it's managers holding team members accountable. In the best organizations on the planet, it is team members that hold other team members accountable. There's this peer accountability that both people who are being held accountable and people who are holding people accountable lean into. It really improves their ability to perform and elevate performance. And what we'll be asking you to do at the end of the session, I'll ask you at the end of the session, is to think about your key actions, how you're going to help your accountability partner to make progress and vice versa, and how often you think you need to review. So they're the three things we'll cover. I'll come back to this slide at the end, but I'm just planting the seed with you at the start of the session again today. And I won't ask you to do this exercise again, but I want to remind you of this exercise. At the start of our workshop 3 weeks ago, it really was 3 weeks ago. It feels like it was like, I don't know, perhaps not yesterday, but it doesn't feel like 3 weeks. But we asked this question of everybody: what do you love most about your role? Why is it vital that you succeed? And you remember the answers that you mentioned, you remember the answers that your peers and colleagues and managers mentioned. And let's remember why we went through that exercise. It was good to hear it, but it's also good to reconnect with our own sense of intrinsic internal motivation and what it is that drives us to do really great work, to want to work with our customers and to succeed in our roles. And it's a really good opportunity to just bring that back to the front of your mind, because that's where motivation lives, right? This is where real motivation lives. And we want to connect back in with that as often as we can, because it not only does it motivate us, but it inspires us back into the job. It makes us feel better energized, and we're able to then reconnect with work and customers more effectively. You've also got your scorecards. So thanks again for completing the scorecards. I think everyone's done that now. So thank you everyone for doing that. You have these 46 assessment statements, the 5 key areas of competency. And again, have a discussion about what you're learning or what you learned as you went through that scorecard exercise. What I very often hear from people is that there were statements in the scorecard that perhaps they hadn't considered as part of their approach to selling, and that that awareness of actually that's a point I need to consider can be really valuable in how you then adapt your approach going forward. So share the results with your accountability partner if you haven't already. Reconvene on it if you've already had the chance to do that. Ask for help if you need it in a specific area, and offer help where you think you really got some strength. And this piece around being positively accountable to change, that's what really helps drive your own development and performance and potential. So we have a roadmap that we're following as part of our 4 workshop sessions. I'll just kind of get you up to speed on where we are in the roadmap, and then I'll lay out the next blocks, as you'll see. So we started with mindset, and we said mindset's vital. So if we don't prime ourselves on a regular basis, we don't work on this intentionally, then we can start to get eroded by the work, by the customer interactions, sometimes by the remote and blended environment. So actually priming ourselves on a regular basis really helps us build the right energy for sales and engaging customers and finding meaning in the work. Once we've got the mindset primed, we then looked at our key account plan framework, these 4 blocks of internal, external, the customer or client, and us and our business. So we've got these 4 reference points that really help to simplify planning, but also give us a really nice structured approach to the way that we engage with customers and we research the market and customers in advance. So we have our plan in place, and that's an ongoing living document for key accounts. So we would continually revisit that. Then we say, actually that plan gives us some key messages that enable us to connect with the customer and create what we call a really strong reason why the customer should engage with us. So remember our principle here that every time we go to see a customer or every time we're engaging with a customer, we should just be going back to, right, actually, what's the reason why for the customer that I want to spend the time with them? And just being really intentional about that messaging so that the customer sees us as continually adding value in all of the interactions that we have with them. And then we said, right, if the customer's clear on why we're there, we're clear on why we're there, that leads us really nicely into, okay, let's make sure we use a consultative sales system. And we're using our Inspire model, which we'll walk through again shortly. So we start with that Inspire model, and at the heart of the model are relationships with existing people and rapport with new customers. So that's kind of where we got to last time. And today we're going to look at the insight and impact stage, and we'll look at needs and needs discovery, which is questioning and listening, as we talked about. And then throughout the final 2 workshops over the next 6 weeks, we'll be then covering the rest of the roadmap. So solutions, proposal, commitment, negotiating, building immediacy, asking for testimonials and feedback, reflecting, developing, and we'll cover virtual selling principles as well. So that's what we've got in store. So let's just kind of give ourselves that sense check. We have some actions from last time. So we talked about meeting in your accountability partners on a weekly basis to discuss implementation, how's it going? And in particular, think about the 3 areas that we covered: mindset, reasons why, preparing for the customer meeting, and rapport and relationships. And so we said, right, what were your key actions for mindset? How could you go about creating one key account plan? So making sure that you had, an attempt at building a plan so that you familiarize yourself with the structure, thinking about the reasons why for the customer, and then these 2 elements of deepening relationships with existing customers and how we connect and build really strong rapport with new customers. So they were the actions from our last session. What I'm going to do, I'm sure you've had the chance to get together already, but I'm going to just give you 5 minutes just to check in with each other. So I'm going to open up a couple, 3 breakout rooms. I'm just going to give you the chance to go back to, we've got Jamie and Alan in one room. We've got Barry and Maggie in another, and we have Kelly and Will in the other. So all I'd like you to do is just have a check-in. You will have had time to discuss anyway, but if you haven't, this is the time to kind of go, right, okay, this is how I'm progressing. Kind of be quite open with each other and also challenge each other. If there's anything that you think, perhaps we should be leaning in more to this, perhaps we should have, maybe it's around the planning, whatever it is for you, but just have a conversation about how you're getting on so far, thinking about what you've completed so far, and perhaps what you might need to improve as you go forward from here. So I'm going to give you, I need 8 minutes, so we'll go until 2:25 to just have that discussion. When we reconvene, I'm just going to ask you to share for each group just a couple of nuggets that you think are important. So I'll open the rooms, you just have to click on the link, and then I'll send you a message and we'll be back at 2:25. Resume. Okay, so how were your discussions? So I'd love to get some feedback from each group. Who would like to give us the first insights?
I'll just go. We're trying to, when we talk about an account plan,
Yeah.
I assume, shall I say, this is based around the SWOT analysis, essentially,
Yeah.
the framework, and combining it with obviously the other actions that we put together, things like the deepening relationships, existing customers, mindset, and just kind of putting it all together, really.
Yeah.
Is that the kind of the right direction?
Kind of, Jamie. I think what's really important is to have a singular customer in mind.
Yeah, which we have, yeah.
And that's the principle, because what you're really looking to do here is build a plan that informs you and makes the approach that you take as impactful for that customer and for your business as possible.
Yeah, we've got the Moorfields for that, Justin.
Yeah.
Moorfields, right, perfect. And have you got one each?
No, we just did one. We just did one together.
Okay. So whose territory is Moorfields on?
Jamie's.
Mine.
Okay, good. And if you could, so as a follow-on action then, Alan, if you could pick up an account for one of your key accounts on your territory as well, just because I'd like you to be able to not just go through the process of filling out the plan, but actually notice the impact it makes for the customer on your own territory as well.
Yeah, no problem.
Perfect. But you're on the right. You're absolutely bang on with what you described there, Jamie and Alan. Yeah.
Good.
I think what we'll be doing next month as follow-up, folks, is we've been discussing this month with the one-to-one format, where we've got our 3 key priority objectives for the following month.
Yeah.
As we get into that process more and more, it's about having those account plans that support those 3 main priority objectives to make sure they're in place.
So are you saying you want 3 accounts then, Tim?
Well, yeah, I think what we've got to do is, as this progresses and grows, if you've got accounts in your pipeline that are generating your new business, we should literally get to a point, not saying next month, and depending of course on the value and the amount of time there, is to start expanding the account plans out and having a deeper plan for all of our business, really.
Well, I think the plans for all customers, there's gonna be a lot of overlapping, isn't there? Let's face it. Each customer's gonna have those core principles that you're gonna plan to, and then you adapt to sort of each scenario, I suppose, aren't you?
Yeah.
That's exactly how I see it, Will. The right-hand side of that account plan is going to be very similar for all accounts.
Yeah.
It's the left-hand side where you're really going to focus your efforts to tailor it to the customer.
Yeah. Cool.
Good.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Thanks, Jamie. And I think, Tim, you're bang on. I love the idea of 3 kind of key priorities and linking them to your key accounts and having a plan for each of those accounts.
Yeah.
That will definitely inform the team, the customers. I think it will give you a much more structured and consistent approach that will deliver greater impact. Thank you. Great. So what else did you come up with? Will, how about you and Kelly?
Yeah, so obviously we discussed the plan. I had a customer in mind who we will populate that template with, but we sort of also discussed the 3 sort of bullet statements that we were sort of targeted to come up with. So obviously the new, existing customer account. So we put, for a new sort of bullet point, we put market leaders in single-use instruments and sets offering quality instruments for surgical procedures, existing customers, exploring all the avenues and maximizing potential, and an existing customer account, ensuring their needs and expectations are being met.
Okay, and this is your reason why to go.
This is our reason why statements, the 3 sort of for the which you got tasked to do. So that was sort of what me and Kel went over, and we also discussed and looked at our sales card scores and identified our strengths and weaknesses, and how we plan to sort of focus on those areas and the mindset aspect of things. And we both sort of agreed that within the mindset area, me and Kel both said sort of awareness of the mindset is is going to be key for us both moving forward, and I suppose taking a step back and being more aware of what drives the mindset and how sort of that can affect our working relationship.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thanks, Will. Can I just revisit those 3 reason why statements with you? Just run them past me again. The first one for new customers.
Yeah, of course. So for new, me and Kelly came up with market leaders in single-use instruments and sets, offering quality instruments for surgical procedures.
Okay. I would advise to kind of get to a point where it's so I suppose market leading is external.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about, so if you think about your customer,
Yeah.
who are you thinking about here, Will? Is this kind of channel now?
Yeah, because me and Kelly have got a bit of a hybrid sort of view looking at it from that regards. I'm sort of dealing it from a customer point of view, but Kelly's also dealing it from a different point of view because she's not direct sales force. So we're trying to combine the both, if that makes sense. So it's a bit of a hybrid statement.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's something in that, Will. I wonder if a refinement of that statement around, market leaders and engaging that customer to help them at least access the same level of market share that you have. If you're doing it from a channel perspective, how we can help you, achieve a market leading status the way we have as a business. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So you're always tailoring that message to how does it resonate best for the customer? Because, if I go like super objective and blunt, and I go, I don't care if you're a market leader, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
If you're saying to me, there are things we know as the market leader that we believe we can share with you to make you, to enhance your growth or give you an access to market leading results, then I'm interested. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Good. Very good.
Cool.
So just think about that for every one of your statements, and I think that'll help you. Just always take it back to the customer. What does it mean? So what for the customer? So what for the customer? Very good. Very good. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Kelly. Kelly, anything you wanted to add to that?
No, just that from an internal perspective, how it works with working directly with Will in the international accounts especially. So we just have to be open-minded that not everything that we do today will be adapted to me the same way it is to everyone else. Of
course. Yeah. You're absolutely right, Kelly. And keep that, keep me honest on that. If I need to just kind of help you to reshape stuff, just say, well, Justin, how does that relate to? We'll make sure that we do that. Yeah, no problem.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Great. So Barry, Maggie, how about you guys? How did you get on?
Yeah, okay. I mean, much the same sort of as well. We've done bullet points for the established, for a new customer, the established customer for growth, existing customer for growth, and the existing customer account. I mean, again, it was a well-established, trusted, reliable company. Hopefully, very soon you'll be able to see that in what I present to you, how that transpires. We've got a good company ethics. And just going in to make sure that in your first meeting that they're aware of all of these things, basically. I mean, I think first impressions count so much. It's making sure that you actually say the right thing, and they can see. I think a lot of they can see the excitement in you actually going to see them, and that makes your customers it buys them into the company a bit, the company ethics, and want to potentially have a partnership with you. So that was more for the existing growth accounts. I think you need obviously a good level of. We say good levels of presence, communication we can offer, a trusting of myself and the company, our new product development that we can have, because if we get new products, that's going to give us growth or potential to growth. And existing account, again, we can offer training packages. We can actually, I think that's the turnover that a lot of these companies have got, that they always need training and their staff needs training, and that's whether you're going in to provide a lunch, we can get you to Blink and actually have a site visit. And it's little things like that. I'm not sure if Maggie, you've got anything else to say in what we discussed.
Yeah, I think we're probably both on the same page with that. The fact that our company's expanding, that we've got the clean room, the mezzanine flooring being built. And for me, that instills in the customer how focused and reliable we'll become, because we can offer more. It was an interesting fact yesterday when I was out with Will. the company that we visited uses Bunzl. Everybody knows that name. It's like a household name brand. They're not delivering. They're not getting it right. And it again, that's the story I can take with me to new customers or existing customers, because more often than not, I find in my 5 weeks, we are getting it right. And our levels of service are exceptional. So that's something for me to take on new business. We've only had one new business call so far. I've done a lot of visits to existing accounts.
Yeah.
But to be fair, Justin, they're all saying the same thing.
I've paid him a lot of money.
We're up there. We are though, aren't we? We're up there. So
yeah.
I also, sorry, Maggie, I also think, you know, for a new customer is, I mean, a lot of the times you'll be going into a customer, you might be swapping from a reusable instrument to a single use, and be prepared to go in with all the benefits of switching to a single use. You know, you'll need to go in and you know, and you run down that with your customer. You find your customer agreeing with you. You know, even if they can't make the switch now, they've got in mind the benefits of looking to switch to a single use product. You know, whether that's ophthalmology or dermatology or MaxFact.
Yeah, I think where we're coming out here is, I think if I jump in a bit, Justin, I think from personally what I'm hearing a little bit is that we go a little, we kind of drill into a bit of detail here. And I think it's almost that higher level, a little bit for me, why. And to a degree, you haven't had much more support around these statements. And I think what we'll do is some more work, and it's going to come through our marketing material in the future. Is last time at the sales meeting, I shared what the work that had been done from the brand positioning work we've done with Embrace. We feel there might still be a couple of tweaks here, but I think referencing back to that and getting used to use some of that language will also support the why statement. I think when I read through here, we've got the moment, we aspire to be your most valued economically viable partner for delivering safe and efficient surgery by putting your needs at the centre of everything we do. There's some of this that translate to the customer that they're looking for economically viable. But again, the connection into what they're doing for their patients, and they want to be safe and efficient. There's probably some work we can do here through the materials for the different discussions that will support more of that why. Because at the moment, we've never had anything that pulls that together that you can actually use as a reference point.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. And I was going to say the same, actually. I think some of the messaging that you've developed there is stuff you'll say in the meeting. So there are things there that you will explain to the customer when you're face to face with them. So what we've got to do is take a step backwards and go, if the customer thinks that's what I'm going to explain to them in the meeting, there's a chance they might go, I'm a bit busy for that. No matter how compelling your proposition, if I think you're going to talk to me about how good your company is, how good your service levels are, how much training you're going to do for me, I might go, well, I can figure that out myself, or I can check out your website, or I can refer back to the notes from the last meeting I had with you. So we've got to go back a step and go, right, what are the compelling reasons why? And how we get to those, remember how we get to those, we go back to customer-only language. I'm not talking about Blink, I'm not talking about Blink's products, I'm talking about what you as a customer will get from working with us. And then the second principle, remember the second principle, the outcome of working with us. What's the outcome for the customer, right? So the outcome of training, for example, is not that I've trained my teams. It'll be something along the lines of increasing clinical confidence, improving standards of patient care, ensuring that the pathway is well documented and followed. It'll be ensuring that everybody is efficient in the use of the products and that it reduces wastage or whatever it is, right? But the outcome of the training or whatever it is we're going in there to discuss is not the discussion. So we have to chunk up and go backwards and think customer only. And then remember the third principle, which is the power of peers. Referencing other customers. So we're not saying we're really good at this. We're saying other customers tell us the benefits of working with us are, and just that disassociation creates authority and credibility. So it's the first pass at this, guys. I would say just keep asking yourself that question, right? Is this Is this positioned in a way that is only relevant to my customer? Is it outcome focused? Is it leveraging other customers as reference points? If you can kind of keep yourself honest with those 3 checking questions, that will really help you shape those statements. But go right back to big picture, high value for the customer. This is why I'm coming to see you. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, good. A lot of the stuff you've got here, we're going to be using as we go through the workshops and we talk about the customer meeting. So it's good content. It's just chunking back up right at the start of the process. Okay, good. Thank you, everybody. We'll dip in and out of these breakout rooms as we go through the session. So let's carry on with the structure. Let me just get my screen up and hold on a sec. Share. Here we go. Hold on. Where are we? There. Sorry. Give me a second. There we go. Right. Okay. So before we go into our process, just want to remind you, you know this already, but I just want to remind you of the stages of your own sales pipeline. Okay. So you're making sure that you segment your customers first so that you can think about account potential, prioritize your accounts and create your plan for the territory. You're then going through your plan and explore process, which aligns really well with our prepare to inspire model, okay? Our prepare to key account framework, and figure out how you initiate contact, identifying the sponsor and key decision makers, identifying your potential opportunities. So that is also linked to our reasons why you're there. You're there to do all this work, but it's on behalf of the customer. Then we've got the piece around qualify. So make sure that you're qualifying your potential opportunities. Then you're presenting solutions. And within this area here, you will find our Inspire sales process. You'll use the entire process within these stages. You're then looking at how you, after your presentation and you've got the customer engaged, how do you run a trial and secure a successful trial? And then how do you close and gain commitment from the customer? That may involve some negotiations, which we'll cover in our workshops. And then you'll look at implementation. And even implementation, as you will all know, when you're implementing a rollout plan with a customer, you're going to be selling to every stakeholder every time you go through that implementation, making sure that they are fully bought in, that they'll become users, they will, use the product in the most appropriate way, and we have to be able to sell and influence to get them to do that. Because sometimes we meet that, not resistance, but some defensiveness from people as we're rolling out implementation. So all the way through your pipeline stages, you'll be using our sales process. And of course, we won't cover the numbers in detail, but the accuracy of pipeline is absolutely critical to all businesses. But for a business like Blink, where you're doing so much, you've got quite a wide portfolio, and you're really trying to service customers as highly as possible, you want to be able to forecast accurately so that you can hold stock and allow customers to get what they need just in time. So it's not only your business processes, but being able to service customers is really important as part of that pipeline accuracy and forecasting process. So I think I'm preaching to the choir on that one, but I wanted to just check in on your stages and how they align. So yeah, Tim, yeah.
No, I was going to say is I think on that we've looked at this a few times, and I think there's one thing that's shining out a little bit more to me at the moment is we focus a lot always about getting the business.
Yeah.
And it's probably for me is that final stage, that implementation stage is where the rubber hits the road. Yeah. Probably my reflection is probably need to put a bit more detail around that in the future of how we plan that with the customer so we maximize the opportunity and it sticks there long term. So that's just to highlight at the moment that I've kind of thought, what we probably need a little bit more ourselves internally about the structure of how we do that.
Yeah, great, good. I'm glad it was a point of reminder. It's one of those things that I remember very clearly in previous, medical businesses I've worked in. It's all very well high-fiving that you've won an account, but until the implementation's done and people are ordering and the product's on the shelf and they're repeating it and they're using it and they're enjoying using it and they reinforce, we're in and we're sticking with it. Everything just is quite a bit of work until you get to that point, and it can be almost as long in the implementation phase as it is in the sales cycle. We just have to recognize that as part of the work we do. Yeah, good.
Thanks.
Okay, perfect. So that brings us to our Inspire model. So I'll just talk you through this again. Last time we covered the center of the model, the client and salesperson relationship. And we looked at that in two ways. We said established relationships and how we build or erode trust and the things we need to do to deposit into those accounts, but also to manage those accounts proactively, because sometimes if we take too passive a role in the relationship, that can erode trust. So we've got to be almost high challenge, high confidence, high energy with the customer. Then we said there are things we can do with new customers that gain us really quick and deep rapport. And there were some specific things we talked about. So there are 3 key principles. And the first principle was about how we manage ourselves internally. So we make sure that we feel good about ourselves, we smile, we're warm, we're sincere. Second thing we talked about then was being curious and listening and asking questions. And then the third thing we talked about was ensuring we match the other person first. Then we move to pace them. Then we can start to lead the relationship, but make sure we do it in that order. So that was relationships. Now, today we're going to look at insight and impact and needs discovery. So we'll start with insight and impact, but the entire process works right the way around through this Inspire mnemonic. But today we're going to really focus on insight and impact and needs discovery. So the reason we start with insight and impact is because what we want to try and do as part of the approach we take to a customer is stand out from first contact. So when we're in crowded marketplaces, if we just look the same as every other supplier, that we become invisible. There's nothing different about us. And we might have a good portfolio, we might have a good product set, we might have a good organization, great support, all that other stuff. But a lot of other companies are saying the same things. A lot of companies are saying, well, trust us to do this, trust us to do that. So what we have to do is think of, okay, how do we look at this differently so that when we engage with the customer, our messaging makes us stand out? And that's why we really craft compelling reason why statements that are different, okay? And it's why when we start our meeting, we think about how we lead with insight and develop impact statements. So let's just kind of talk about what we're trying to achieve. So with insight and impact, we're really trying to stand out in that initial meeting. And the response we're looking for from the customer is something along the lines of, wow, I didn't know that. Wow, I didn't know that, right? We're teaching the customer something that disrupts their train of thought. And that immediately sparks the customer and the relationship. And so we can share insights about all sorts of things, right? But it could be the marketplace, it could be trends, it could be data, it could be future direction. It could be business intelligence. It could be some research that we've conducted or we've brought in. It could be feedback from customers. You've got some great research. You've just been through a market research program at the moment. There'll be some insights in there that you can share with customers, right? There's some opinions, some demographic data. It might be guidance or regulations that's new. There's some new evidence in the space, some new information, new interpretations. And, remember, a lot of our customers, either clinically or financially, procurement type roles, they are embedded in their roles day to day. They've got these kind of blinkers on. They are seeing patients, they're ordering products, they're doing all the stuff they do, and they don't often get their head above the kind of tactics into the strategy and think longer term. And that's where we can add value just in the conversations that we have. It may be, final piece, it may be like a hidden opportunity or a threat. You might have done some calculations on what's happening in the market and be able to make some assumptions about where it's going and be able to share those details. If we look at this and these pieces of data, it may indicate that this could be a potential future opportunity. How would you want to explore that with us, or whatever it is? It might be a financial model, it might be a whole life cost. It's one of the things that I know in medical devices we used to do a lot of, and that was try and bring back a whole life cost calculation. And I remember the first time I heard this phrase, it was must be 12 years ago, and I was in 3M, and I'll give you a non-medical example, okay? I was in 3M and I was choosing a new company car, and I noticed that on the company car list, I had the choice at the same grade of a Ford Mondeo and a BMW 5 Series. And I kind of looked and I thought, they must have made a mistake. How can there be a BMW 5 Series at the same grade as a Mondeo? And I kind of thought, I'll keep that under my hat in case it is a mistake. Anyway, long story short, I had a conversation with the person who ran the car list, and she said to me, oh no, it's not a mistake. The reason they're at the same level is because whilst the initial purchase cost is different, the BMW is higher, the residual value when we sell them through auction at the end, the BMW is so much higher than the Mondeo that we calculate a whole life cost of the vehicle. And so the monthly fee for a 5 Series BMW and a Mondeo is about the same to us based on that residual value. And that, so it kind of made me think, geez, the whole life cost of leasing a BMW is similar to a Mondeo, even though the guide list price was about 10,000 more. So just kind of makes you think, when a customer says, well, we've got to buy the cheapest, are they thinking whole life cost? And how do you help them see it if you need to just kind of reshape their thinking about that? So that's exactly the sort of impact statement we might want to make. You can have, in that example, you can have a 5 Series BMW for the same price as a Mondeo, and there's zero risk for your accounting. So we wouldn't use that obviously in this context, but think about those kind of examples.
That example, Justin, just to say for our sort of business model, we see it a lot in practice when we see a customer using a cheaper alternative to ourselves. They're having to open 2 or 3 sets to get a functioning needle holder. Well, before you know it, then that's an additional sort of £10-15 on top of their set. Yeah. So that sort of model does, that sort of example, should we say, does sort of suit our model really.
Yeah, and that is a perfect way to be able to position it, Will. And if you've got evidence around that, to be able to say, the average clinician in this space finds that they have to do this in order to get this result, and they think the unit cost is X, when actually the unit cost could be Y, that just gets people thinking that they're exactly the kind of disruptive insights that we want to share. And if you
I think also, Justin, it can work the other way, because if you ask the question, 1, what are they using, and 2, do you have any issues with your current supplier, then they normally come straight out with it, like Will said. Well, yes, we have to open. Sometimes we have to open 2 packs because the scissors don't work. And then the answer to that question is then, well, that's another additional cost.
I think where we are, we're digging into this a little bit again. We need to get to the stage. Barry's got some good work going on at the moment, and I think it comes back to what Justin said earlier. We can have the discussion, but that's words. I think where we need to get to is we need to develop the case study, the reference location to back those discussions up. Else, if you don't, everyone can say we can talk about it and it makes sense, but realistically, it's coming back to an evidence base of we've done this elsewhere or we've got this study.
Yeah.
But if they're saying that to you, Tim, rather than you saying it to them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If coming on to that, is understanding that need. So I'm sure we're going to talk about that this afternoon.
Yeah, and that is. So I guess we will unpack that as part of questioning, Alan, because you may find that just an insight and an impact statement right at the beginning gets the customer open. Sometimes customers will know that's happening, but they won't tell you.
Yeah.
And one of the ways to get them to think about that is if you can position this in a way that says, the data shows this is quite a common issue. And all of a sudden, as a customer, my defensiveness around the issue, because it's no longer my issue, it's a common issue, I don't feel so bad about admitting that now. It's not a failure on my part, because that sometimes we've got that, I suppose you'd call it ego, to have to contend with in customers where they're like, well, I don't want to admit I've got a problem. So how do we do that? We do it through insights, objective data, evidence, and leaning into impact statements. That's good. Thank you. Great observations. So when we do this, when we take an insight-led approach right at the start of our sales process, we get this unconscious connection with clients, right? So they don't remember what we talked about this last time. You've got unconscious, the thinking and feeling part of the brain, and then you've got conscious, which is rational logic thought. We really want to tap into that instinct of our customer. And so when we share these kind of insights, we unlock instinct, and it establishes our credibility. It piques the customer's interest, and they're getting curious. They start to lean in, and that's what this first statement's all about. It's getting the customer to go, really? Tell me a bit more about how that works. Right? That's what we're looking for in this statement. And when we get it right, it can create value right at the start of the relationship, demonstrates a positive intent, and can even appear as like a favor or a gift, depending on what it is that you're delivering as your insight statement. And of course, most importantly for us, it kickstarts the sales process. So the idea here is that once the customer's engaged and they go, tell me a bit more about that, we can be off and away into the sales process. And I've already talked about this, but I just want to remind you, as part of these insights that we gather for impact statements, the 3 key principles: customer only, outcome focused, peer-to-peer leverage. So we're talking about other customers. So it never feels like we're pitching. Because whenever we say we do this, or Blink does that, or our products do this, sometimes it can feel a bit pitchy. When we just change the language, customers tell us this is really valuable. Customer feedback is really amazing on this. What they're saying is, and that just that relanguaging, repurposing of the language makes such a difference. So I also said top of our key account plans, your market insights, top left in particular, but also your external validation. That's where you'll be able to gather insights that are going to really resonate with customers. So let's put this into practice. I'm going to give you 10 minutes just to start to work through what are your key insights for different parts of the business or the portfolio. And from those insights, from the things you know, the external things you know, what should or could your impact statements be, depending on where you are in the process with the customer? So I'm just going to give you some time to think about those. We don't have to nail these today, but I want to stimulate the thought so that you can take this as an additional exercise as we go away. Okay, so I'm going to open the room. We'll go until, it's just turned 2 minutes to, so we'll go until for 8 minutes past 3, just so we have 10 minutes on it. And then we'll reconvene, take some of your insights, and we'll start to think about how we write these up and share them among the group. But for now, just think about your key insights and impact statements. Okay, everyone clear on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. Over to you. Okay, good. What did we come up with then? Who'd like to kick us off with some insights that you think would be useful?
Yeah. Well, Maggie and I talked about, and it's a really big thing now, and it is customer referral.
Yeah.
It's that, I actually, I've actually just got back from Newcastle today. I've used a bit of an example that one of the some work I'm doing with dermatology department there.
Yeah.
They actually first sort of heard about us just when I started with the company, because they'd been using some of our products in ophthalmology, and one of the ophthalmology sisters and dermatology sisters were talking, and they mentioned Blink. Have you used these here? They find they've got good quality, and hence why we do that. So customer referral, I think, is
it can be key, can't it?
It's really, I think it's really important, really important now, and it gives you a really good start point to talk about with your customers, because again, what you said, Justin, you're not just talking about, these, they're so good at the quality. You're actually talking about actual, feedback, feedback from someone who actually said these products are really, really good. And we've even got, thanks to Will, one of us, with Dr. Z works with, we've actually got literature that we can actually provide, say in dermatology, from one of the big dermatologists in South Wales, for customers to say, look, this is, you want some feedback. Dr. Motley, who's known throughout the UK, gave some work I was doing in Leicester a really, really good recommendation of why you need to use Blink. So you're not going in there just saying it yourself. You've actually got the recommendation of clinicians potentially throughout the country.
Yeah. So you're basically using another customer's, whether it's a referral or documented evidence of the results they're getting from using your portfolio as your insight to be able to position the customer.
Yeah.
And Barry, so it's a great one. It's a great it's a great link in to get into a customer. If you have a customer where they've not directly referred you, how do you still use it in the same way? How can you use it in that context?
Well, I think I mean, if you gave the example of Dr. Motley, most people have heard of him in dermatology. But I think I think you could use it. You could provide. I mean, obviously, we can talk about our products. The good quality of our products. We've got samples to give along. If you need any further, if you need anything further to look at, the quality of our products, we can actually provide you with some customer feedback and some customer information, and that could be a referral from a surgeon or some clinical staff.
Okay. And do you mind me, just so that I completely understand it, what was the doctor's name again? Dr.
Motley.
Motley. So what does Dr. Motley say about your instruments? What does he say is different? What's the value statement?
I mean, Will. This is Will's baby, because Will fortunately has got the knows Dr. Motley and has known him for a number of years. I've never even met Dr. Motley, but I met some of his colleagues and example. But I think he's just been using Blink for a long time. He's never had any major issues with them. He trains all his staff, all the staff that he trains with them. I mean, Will, you'll probably be able to expand a bit more on.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think really for Dr. Motley, his sort of statement was always, he'd been for many years looking for disposable instruments and was unsuccessful. And obviously many years ago stumbled across Blink, and really it was the only company that he was willing to use, as he felt the quality with that of a reusable standard. And that was always his sort of pitch, I suppose, to his colleagues and his peers, was that this particular brand, Blink Medical, their instruments, single-use instruments, are as good as reusable. So that was that's really the should we say the driving factor and the sort of the main focus when he recommends recommends Blink, really.
Okay, so that's your statement, right? That Dr. Motley, one of the leading clinicians in dermatology, is reputed to say he uses Blink because even though the instruments are disposable, he doesn't compromise on the quality as if he was using a reusable. Yeah. Okay. And there's a shorter, sharper way to put that, but that is a very powerful statement. No, I would say that would open the door to a lot of conversations.
And we can see that the power of a statement along those lines and the influence of someone like that. I mean, we can see it. I can see it in my territory, and it's starting to sort of go into the north and other areas within the UK. So, and that's been like I said, such a great sort of opportunity for us.
Yeah, super, brilliant, great example. Thank you. Really good, really good. So that's really good for dermatology. What did the other groups come up with? What Kelly, Will, what did you guys come up with?
So really, in terms of insight, we sort of looked at the sort of the using knowledge and understanding as an insight. And usually we sort of said like knowledge and demonstration and understanding of the customer's needs, because I think you can gain the customer's trust by demonstrating knowledge. And I think having an understanding of their needs. For example, if you're talking to a customer who have got on-site sterilization 2 minutes down the road, well, you've identified that the chances of us using single use there are going to be slim. But it's having that understanding, and I think knowledge is power, and knowing these things is a key into insight, really.
Yeah. Okay. To understand the customer's capability, their function, the organization, how they're operating.
I think it's understanding their needs and then understanding how to best fulfill those needs.
Yeah. Okay. So in that situation, what in terms of, I guess what I'm thinking of is, as you've got a reason to be there.
Yep.
Okay? So your reason why you're there should link to your impact statement.
Yeah.
Okay? And then your impact statement it's about, remember what the result we're looking for here is the customer goes, I didn't know that, or in their head, they're like, you've just told me something, not only was I not aware of, but that's changed how I think.
When I say knowledge as well, there's knowledge, but also knowledge like product knowledge of the market, knowledge of all these things I think is important. And I think that ultimately drives the sale process is a demonstrating a knowledge of not just that particular sale, but the market, the products, everything associated with that sale, I think is important. And that usually is a good way of a bit like demonstrating insight, I suppose, because there's nothing worse than a customer says, do you know this? And you don't know it. Whereas going in with that prior knowledge of what that instrument does, this, what that does, do you see what I'm trying to say? That side of things.
Yeah, I do. I guess I'm trying to think about the like almost the leverage point right at the start. How do you disrupt the thinking? And that you'll be doing this throughout your conversations. It's about making it really intentional. So one of the ways that I do it with customers, I very often get inquiries from managers of sales teams, sales directors, and one of the things they'll say to me is, and this is so common, it's quite remarkable. They'll say we just need a workshop on how to get our sales team to close more deals, right? We just want to teach them how to close more deals. And I say, let's have a conversation about how I can help you close more deals, because that's what they want. But actually, what we find is that it's not about closing skills. It's about sales process. Because if you follow the process, you naturally get to a closing point. You get commitment from the customer. But just teaching them to say, can I have the order? Or different ways to say, can I have the order? That's not going to change anything. You have to kind of almost go back to, right, these are the principles that need to be in place so that when you get to the point where it's appropriate to ask for the order, it feels natural and it feels right for you and the customer. That's how you close. And so I'm thinking from your point of view, you've got a portfolio, you've got a customer, there's stuff but you almost need to take them back a step before you can go through the process and then get to that point where you can say, right, actually, here's how we can help you. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thanks, Will. Jamie, Alan, what did you guys discuss?
Talking about, well, actually revisited my sort of 3 reason why statements. Actually, they kind of fit in with impact statements as well.
Yeah.
I did a few. One's quite prevalent to this conversation. And it's basically around actually talking to Roger today about introducing a new forcep. And then I think of Moorfield. So my conversation to Moorfield is going to be very much along the lines of what we've introduced a new product. I was just speaking to the MD. We've introduced a new forcep.
Yeah.
Knowing how you operate your business and how you need to adapt to the market, you came to mind straight away. And I want to come in and really just get your feedback and just get your opinion on this and see if we can move forward with it. And it's got your sign off, and kind of put it on them. We're coming to them for their help because they are very important.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's like a request.
Yeah.
A request for your help.
Not salesy. It's kind of you're a big customer. How you operate, you could appreciate this. It's not in the market yet. I'd like to get in your hands and see what you think about it.
Yeah. So almost like a first glance.
Yeah, absolutely.
A new innovation. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. Good. Thanks, Jamie. Was there something else that you wanted to?
Well, no. Like I said, they're just my 3 reason why statements. As far as gaining an audience with these people, again, it's along the same lines about being kind of, I'll say not non-aggressive, but one of the statements had was that being one of our most significant customers and for quite some time, just want to get some time in front of you to review how we've been performing for you, really, getting to make sure we're supporting you properly, and make sure you're happy, you're fully informed, and that we can move forward, with confidence. Again, it's not a sales call, it's a review, it's affect you, and what can we do for you?
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, nice. Yeah, especially if it's an established account where you want to demonstrate your commitment to moving the relationship forward. Yeah, very good. Very good. Nice. Thanks, Jamie. Alan, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I've only got one, and again, it's one of the why statements for both new and existing accounts is an impact statement saying that you've been looking at your numbers, and I think there is something that I can help you with and add some efficiencies to save you money. So I'd like to get together with you to discuss those, particularly if you've got, as Jamie said, if you've got a new product, and if you've got, say, Dr. Motley behind you as well, depending on which subject you're talking about, it's a great way of getting in that door.
Nice. Yeah, very nice, Alan. Yeah, savings and efficiencies are always going to perk someone's ears up. Yeah, because there's a continual drive, right? And that's very good. Thank you, Alan. You got a really good series of impact statements there, guys. Thank you. I'm conscious, Maggie Kelly, was there anything you guys wanted to add to this as part of your discussions?
No, mine was just from a sort of customer point of view. It was understanding them as an organisation, through from whoever receives the order to the end user. So from my perspective, that's quite important in getting that knowledge.
So that you can help them deliver the best quality service
Yeah.
possible to their customer. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, really good. Really good.
I was just looking at some of these, just listening to people and the feedback and the positioning, and I've just actually written down a couple of bullet points myself, picking up on different elements people have said, and and this is something areas I can probably crunch some numbers and we can qualify. You talked about referral, dermatology, and I've got here is over 70% of our business in the past 12 months has been secured on referral from other customers. For me, that prompts the question from the customer to say, well, why is that? Why are people doing that?
Yeah.
I've got the whole thing about we're highly recommended by leading surgeons in this category. Again, we can back that up with some statements. I think if you take it to the ophthalmology side, and maybe this is more a little bit niched around IVT, I think we can say that IVT packs is the fastest growing part of our business presently. If you're aware of that, that's again why from the customer's perspective, why is that growing so fast for you?
Yeah.
I like Jamie's kind of new product. We've got a new product introduction. You as a customer came to mind, knowing your needs.
Yeah.
Those type of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was just a little bit of my info, and I think we can probably work this for the different category areas, especially as we develop material. Is that the material is going to be more defined around specific opportunities? Is at the same time we develop the impact statements that support that material.
Yeah. Yeah. Really good. And that thanks for the reflections, Tim. You'll notice, everybody, you got to this. Your reason why statements and your impact statements are similar. They kind of overlap, but they're also complementary and slightly different. Brilliant. Maggie, did you have anything you wanted to share with us? Oh, Maggie, you're on mute. Sorry.
There you go. Sorry.
Quote of 2020 and 2021. Go on.
We've got we've got a sweepstake on that comment.
Go on, Maggie.
I'm just kind of thinking about how am I going to progress my career with Blink, and what am I going to do, and so on. And I think the fact that we've got, again, such excellent feedback from customers. So my focus is going to be to get them talking about the positives of their experiences.
Yeah.
And then, for example, I've come across City Hospital, which is one of my projects, or it will be, that use us very limitedly for dermatological products. They've got a massive eye unit. And I'll get an into that department, the ophthalmology side, by using case studies from other people. That for me is going to be a win-win.
Yeah. Great. So you within an account, you can use one part of your portfolio or one part of your usage to introduce you to the other part. Yeah, great.
Absolutely. And I'm sure, colleagues have done that hundreds of times already, but that just like a simplistic way and a surefire way of getting through the door somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah.
Also been using LinkedIn as well. Because I think when you go onto LinkedIn and they see who your connections are, to grow it in that area gives you kudos, doesn't it?
Yeah, gives you credibility if they see you're with key people in the field. Yeah,
surgeons and so on. So
absolutely.
It's interesting how we've all got different things, which is good as well.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's really helpful.
Good. Very good. And I'll just share before we're going to break in a second for a bit. We'll give ourselves a leg stretch. One of the things that we used to do very successfully as part of our approach in 3M as a medical division, we used to, we'd be really clear on the outcomes that we were generating for customers, and we'd do wherever we could, we try and measure those, right? So I think about an example around, so when we were dealing with wound care, and this is when Tim will remember that I was working, alongside him in the market, one of the measures that we would try to work with customers on is, we called it pressure ulcer prevalence, right? How many incidences of pressure ulcers they were recording in the trust. And we'd work with them on a campaign using the products, training the nurses, and we would get them to measure what was the prevalence of pressure ulcers before our intervention, right? And then we'd run like a 3-6 month program with them, train all the nursing staff, make sure they were applying the products correctly, and they'd get better at measuring and recording the pressure ulcer prevalence. So you'd almost expect it to go up, but it always went down. Every single time it went down. And so we'd measure that. So we'd say, right, it's gone from here to here. And then we'd just start to build a bank of averages. So we'd say, on average, customers that work with us to introduce our portfolio see a reduction in pressure ulcers of X%, or from here to here, depending on the trust size. And that became the lever. So we were never talking to people about the portfolio. It was, how do we help you reduce this incidence of, in this instance, pressure ulcers for your patients in the trust? And imagine, so that's got nothing to do with our portfolio in the first instance. But the impact statement was, customers who choose to work with us right the way across, the plethora of solutions, see a reduction in this outcome they're looking to drive of X. And there wasn't a customer, very, very rarely did a customer say, no, I don't want to talk to you about that. Now, it didn't always turn into business, but it did spark lots of conversations about how we can expand the portfolio, do more with them. And it wasn't the pitch around the product to start with, it was about the outcome they were trying to generate. So I'll get you continue to think about this. For your ophthalmic customers, for your dermatology customers, what's the outcome they're looking to create or to generate? And how does your portfolio, your training, your support help them hit that outcome? How do you measure it, and how do you position that as the way that you want to keep talking to them?
But isn't it also, Justin, about back to what you were saying about those deepening relationships, about building those bank accounts and putting regular deposits in those bank accounts in terms of the reduction in the pressure, etc. you were just talking about?
Yeah. Absolutely, Alan. It all correlates and it integrates. But this reason why, when we used to review with customers, yes, we'd sit down and talk about product usage, and we'd talk about volumes, and we'd talk about structured discounts and stuff. But that would all sit alongside, how many pressure ulcers have we reduced in the trust? Where are you at the moment with it? Which departments should we revisit so that we make sure that they understand how to use the products, so that they are maintaining the discipline and rigor around pressure ulcer management? And do you see what I mean? Because that was what the customer was measured by. That was their primary measure. How many pressure ulcers am I preventing in the trust? And there'll be, so if you haven't got it completely clear with your customers at the moment, just start to ask them in your conversations over the next weeks and months. What are your key measures of success? What are you measured on? They'll have loads of outcome. Used to be, what was it? PROMs, wasn't it? Patient recorded outcome measures.
Yeah.
What are the outcome measures that your customer has to be reviewed on a regular basis, and how do you link to that? Because when you get into that discussion, it just unlocks opportunity that becomes natural as part of your review with the customer. Okay.
I think on this, it's quite interesting when you relate it back to some of the work that Barry's been doing with some of his key customers, which is driving some real value for us moving forward.
Yeah.
And I think it's around us getting to stage collect data is going to be very powerful for us. It's collecting that data that we can use it. And though Barry at Leicester, they're collecting the data on unusable instruments that when they're opening packs. Now, if we can secure that data set, and then we can implement and get a data set ourselves, it comes back to me to get to that point to be able to say, we've proven that we've reduced the instance of unusable medical devices in packs by 99%.
Yeah.
That's it. We could use that as a reference, even if it's a report that we get them to just write and give to us. I mean, it's invaluable, isn't it, as well? And
that then links back to the highly recommended, the referrals.
Yeah.
I think for us, we can do a lot more about our positioning and building up our customer story almost.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. Great. Really, really good discussion, guys. Like this part of the process always stimulates a lot of thought and discussion. Just keep going back to it. Keep working through it. We are going to break in a second. What I'd like you to do, if you don't mind, is the insight statements you've just mentioned. If you can, for each group, you can just write them up just so that you've got them in a Word document. And Tim in the background has set up a shared file. So we'll have some folders, and in those folders, those shared folders, you'll be able to upload your key account plan. You'll be able to upload your reason why statements. So the reason why statements that you've worked through, if you can write those up as well, please. And now you've got impact statements. So in one folder, you'll have those different subfolders where you've got your key account plans, reason why statements, impact statements, and then you'll be able to see what each of you is doing and just share that as best practice. So if I could just invite you to write those up, upload them to those folders. Tim, if you're okay to share the folder location with everybody so that they know where to find it.
Yep.
And then it just gives you a storage mechanism for all this great work that we're going to do throughout the program. Perfect. Excellent. Thanks, guys. Really good. Really, really good. Right. Let me pause the recording. So we are continuing with our process. We are, remember where we are in the cycle. So we've prepared for the meeting. We've got a really compelling reason why for the customer. We've developed rapport. The kind of, there's a connection. It feels like it's flowing. We've then landed an impact statement where the customer's gone, okay, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. And they might even say at that point, well, tell me how I can use that, or tell me a bit more about that. And what we have to do is, at this point, it's really tempting to jump in and start going, you know, doing the jazz hands. We're Blink, we've got this, we've got that, we do this, we do every, you know, because we're really proud of our organization. What we have to do at this stage is pivot the conversation to needs discovery. And how we do that is as simple as, you know, we've landed an impact statement. The customer says, wow, I didn't know that. We might say, well, before we tell you more about that, would you mind if I ask a few questions about your organization and your role? No one ever says no to talking about themselves. Never. So that's how we transition into the needs discovery phase. It's really important that we do it, because we've got to understand everything about the customer before we start talking about what we offer. Okay? Because if we start talking about what we offer, and then the customer says, oh, well, it doesn't work like that here, we don't have that, or we don't do that, you can't match it to what they've told you they need if you haven't asked what they need. That's why we go needs discovery next. So the rest of our session today is all about needs discovery. So it sounds obvious, but we can only discover needs by questioning and listening, right? We can only discover needs by questioning and listening. It's the only way to do it. We're going to cover listening first, because listening is really difficult. I know it sounds like it should be really simple, but listening is really difficult. We talked about mindset earlier. We talked about the stuff that's going on in our head. It's one of the big issues that we have with listening. Now, the biggest barrier to listening is us. We kind of know that intuitively, but there's some interesting statistics from the International Listening Association that really help to shine a light on why it's so difficult. So let me just walk through these. The first is that when we speak, the average person speaks at somewhere between 125 and 175 words per minute, right? It's the average speaking rate. The challenge is we listen. We have the capability to listen at close to 450 words per minute. So all of a sudden you see there's immediate threefold disconnect between what we're capable of doing and what the other person's capable of in terms of speaking at us. So very often our mind starts to wander. And if you think beyond that, if you could put thinking into words per minute, it would be somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000. So you see there's this massive disconnect between someone's talking, my mind's going, will you just get on with it? And especially when we are constantly covering things that we know about. We know our business, we know our customers, we know the landscape. So there's all sorts of stuff gets in the way. And so the result is that on average, we only absorb somewhere between 17 and 25% of what we hear. Think about that for a minute. 17 to 25% of what we hear, right? And fun fact, the number one reason cited in courts of law for why marriages fail is that one or the other partner does not feel that they've been listened to. That's the root cause. Well, they don't listen to me anymore. We have nothing in common. So it's really fascinating. It's all linked to listening. So one of the things to remember, one of the principles to remember when we are working on developing listening skills is that in order to truly listen, we've got to create silence, right? And it's a pure coincidence, but the words listen and silent are made up of the same letters, right? You can't really do one without doing the other. It's very difficult to do one without doing the other. So we've got to get ourselves tuned into this principle of, right, actually, I've got to create some silence. I've got to create some space to be able to truly listen. And the reason that we struggle with listening, because there's lots of things that are going on in our head all the time. Biggest blocks to listening are us and our mind, as we said, right? But most common issues with listening, number one is preparing to speak. Okay, so in my head, I've already got it all sussed out. I know what I'm going to say. I'm just waiting for you to finish so I can jump in, right? Biggest block to listening. But there's loads of other things that go alongside that. So we're preparing to speak because we've got our own agenda, because we presume some stuff that is going on in the background and we're just kind of boxing all that together. So we don't really need to hear what they've said because we're ready to go. Sometimes because the conversation might go on a bit longer than we thought, we start to kind of drift off into daydreams. There might be other things going on in our environment. There might be distractions. There might be stuff going on in the customer's background or whatever, especially if we're on like a video call. We might start to feel a bit bored in the conversation if the customer's going on and on and on about something. And then there's other things going on. We might be comparing in our minds what this customer said with something else that we've heard or something else that someone else in their organization said. We might start to filter stuff out as unimportant. We might start to make judgments on what the customer said. And all of that consumes us and prevents us from listening. If we're multitasking, if we're taking notes, if our own inner voice is kind of going on a bit of an internal commentary and we haven't learned to just quiet that voice, all of a sudden we're 5 minutes into a conversation, we've not realized what the customer said. So listening is something that we have to get used to doing and doing more intentionally. So here's a technique that's really useful. You will be using this in certain situations, if not all. If you're not using it in all situations, just start to cultivate it so that you do. So we develop active listening. Okay, so when we're actively listening, it's really important that what we do is we repeat key words that the customers use. So if they say something, don't say something like it. Don't say, oh, do you mean this? Just say, oh, okay, so you mean this. Just repeat what they say back to you. Key statements. Now, obviously, you're not just going to reflect back everything your customer says at you, but you might just summarize at the end of, when they've worked through a series of things they've told you, you might just go, okay, so this, and this are important. Yeah, okay, great. And then you might carry on the conversation. But learn to, when you summarize, what happens is your customer unconsciously gets this acknowledgement that you're listening, and you start to reinforce that you've truly understood their needs. And it's as simple as just reinforcing and repeating back to them some of the key phrases, key words, key needs that they've told you they have. And then once you've done that, at the end of your discussion with them, you just summarize the discussion. So you'll have been doing it throughout the discussion anyway, and then you summarize at the end. So what you've told me is, and you just list the points that are most relevant. And when you take this approach to cultivating active listening, it does a couple of things. One is it forces your attention. So you have to be more attentive to actively listen, especially when you know you're going to summarize at the end. You can only summarize at the end if you really actively listened. And then finally, the other thing that it does is it makes you more influential, right? Because if you, one of the definitions of influence is to understand what somebody else needs, to know what you need, and to ensure both of your needs are met. That's influence. And we can only do that if we really deeply and actively listen to our customers. And so this sounds like an obvious thing, but listening is quite an art, and it's something we have to continually practice. So I'm just going to invite you to have a conversation with your partner. Think about blocks to listening that you might encounter, either consciously or unconsciously. Think about using silence and how well you use silence, and perhaps some of the opportunities you might have to do it more. And then think about this principle of active listening, repeating key words, summarizing at the end, and then being able to really use that as a way to make you more attentive and the customer more easily influenced. Okay, so that's your discussion. We'll have until 4 o'clock, so about just under 10 minutes until 4 o'clock, and then we'll take some insights. Then we'll move on to questioning. Okay, over to you guys. Pause that recording. Resume the recording. That's a new function on Zoom, by the way, that it does that every time you pause or restart the recording. Okay, so what did we find out? What did we find out about listening? We look at blocks to listening, silence, and active listening. What did you discover?
I think Maggie and I mean, it's one of the things when I got into sales, because the first thing I thought about is engaging with your customer, making sure you listen. I mean, nothing worse than being in a meeting with a customer and say they give a list of 4 or 5 things that they need from you. You go out the meeting, you couldn't remember, you have to email them back or ring them. Sorry, look, I just told you, and but I've seen it. I'm sure we've all seen it with different people. And you think, it's engaging and remember exactly what because the things that your customer needs, you just remember, you retain that information. And you only do that by engaging with your customer and actively listening to what they're saying, and not getting distracted or daydreaming or listen to anything else like that. No. Maybe
it's also about asking them about themselves, the role, what they do, etc.
And the personal stuff, absolutely. You got to listen all equally. It's all equally important, really. The personal stuff.
And shutting up and creating space to listen.
Yeah.
I think me and Kelly also identified that a big factor is within listening is body language as well. Is always a key factor.
Yeah, you've got to look engaged as well as sound engaged. You've got to look worse. And we were just talking about back in eyewear as well. When you've got that body language that you're not even wanting to listen, you've got body language has got to be correct as well. So.
And identifying me and Kel said like distractions, internal and external factors that can impact on listening.
Yeah.
Like if you're in a really busy ward and you're speaking to a nurse, well, that's a different scenario, isn't it, than what it is like a one-on-one. So it's just being aware of how you adapt to the different sort of positions you'll be in with regards to listening.
Yeah,
that's it. You might have a customer, and somebody say if you've gone into a nurse manager or their phone might go off, and they're trying to juggle 4 or 5 jobs at the same time, and just understanding that and not let it distract you. It might distract them for a second, but it's not going to distract you from their conversation and what they need. So.
Yeah.
We also spoke about confirming what they said back to them. I also put it on an email.
Yeah.
Just to make sure, have I understood your request correctly?
Yeah.
That's summarising the discussion, isn't it?
Definitely. Yeah.
And also repeating the key words.
Well, it's usually not you with your customer, just say they'll send you an email saying, actually, sorry, I forgot to mention, could we also have that? And you've engaged, like you said, you'll come out the meeting, you know what they want, you've emailed them to say, I'll get these, say you want some samples, you want 4 samples, bang, and they'll also say, oh, actually, what I'm thinking about, can we also have a sample of that? You've already known what they needed. It's usually them that will actually turn around and say to you, actually, I forgot to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also teaching yourself, obviously, you got to listen. I think they said we just touched upon it. The main thing of listening is retention of the information, isn't it?
Mm.
You're coming out the meeting, you know exactly what they need, and you've retained information.
Yeah. Do you guys? How do you do that? Do you just make some quick notes, or what's your notes in the meeting? Yeah.
I tend to keep it in my head and then. I don't. Yeah.
The older I get, the more notes I need to make. It used to be. It's all on paper.
Me too.
I agree with you there.
I can't be a hero.
I'll come out the meeting, and I'll write down what I need if it is good. But if they've got a list, 100 different things, obviously, then you'd have to write it down. But very often, I'll do it, and then as soon as I go, I'll either write it down or phone up one of the customer services girls and email them and say, this is what you need. I mean, it's just different people work in different ways. I always think that, if I was in a meeting taking notes, I always prefer to engage your customer by looking and talking to them. But, people do things different ways, don't they?
Yeah.
I think there's that balance, isn't there, when you're in a meeting of note taking, can disrupt almost that level of engagement. And I know we used to have one of our colleagues that was a consistent note taker, and you almost think, from a perspective of the customer, how's person, it's getting the balance right of capturing key elements, but not let note taking take over the whole meeting. That literally, is this person just writing down everything I say?
Well, and it breaks the communication flow, doesn't it? There's nothing worse. You wouldn't have a conversation with your friend and write down you wouldn't sit there with a notepad, would you?
No.
So I
No,
think you're
exactly.
right. It's identifying key areas that are important. And like I said, remembering them if you can, but if not, making notes of it. But I think, just writing the whole meeting down in notes, I think looks awful.
Yeah.
I agree. You
I'd
disengage.
say, the notes you want to take are the things you're repeating back to the customer.
Yeah.
They should be your key words, your key phrases, their key needs. Yeah.
Also, I think what's come through strongly, and I know from being out in the field, is I think it was brought up earlier, the environment of how you're going to engage the customer.
Yeah.
And it really is setting that up for yourselves to win in that environment. You say, if you know it's going to be a troublesome environment, or you've been there before and you've identified that there could be some environmental issues around the individual, is there something different, or can you reset the location to the meeting, or is Zoom or Teams a more preference that you're going to lock them into the discussion more than what you've experienced in the past? So I think we've all been met and the different people, and we've all know their environments a little bit more. We know them as individuals, and it probably is that element then of understand, how do I think I'm going to get the best out of this?
I agree, Tim. I agree. Manage the environment in advance if you can. And that may be, as you say, inviting them to a virtual meeting. It might be, next time should we see you in the coffee shop or the coffee area or whatever, just to try and give, because they will appreciate that improved environment to have a quality discussion with you anyway. You probably get more done if you can take them out of their environment than if you're going to, a ward or somewhere where they're going to be busy and distracted. Yeah, really good. Really good.
Just get your insight, Justin, on, I just made a comment that was also made, was that follow-up element. That, I think everybody kind of goes through this, you take as much in as possible, but a lot kind of, you walk out the door and there's something there that you think, that was a miss. Is within that wrap up in the meetings, how do you feel about that kind of asking almost permission to say, if there's anything I think of, can I follow up? Or do you think that's just something we can naturally just expect and send in?
I know, I think asking for permission to leave the door open, Tim, is absolutely the right way to do it. Yeah. And when we get to the right stage in the sales process, I'll cover this, but there is a principle about always maintaining the sense of momentum in the sale. So at the end of every customer discussion, we should be linking to the next step in the process for us and the customer, so that we schedule that there and then. We're not then having to chase them in the background after the meeting. So being able to go, right, at the end of that session that day, that discussion, we do a summary, we agree the actions of the customer, we agree our actions, we put timelines next to them, we just go, how does that feel? Yeah, great, brilliant. So next time we meet, we just schedule that in. Just scheduled. So the next time that would be appropriate for us to meet, how long do you think we need? And they might say, I don't know, a month or 2 weeks or whatever. It depends on where you are in the process. Just make sure you book it there and then. So you're not saying, oh, I'll give you a ring in a week to book the next meeting. Just, would you mind if we got our diaries out now? Schedule it.
The trouble is with that, Justin, sometimes a lot of people is they don't have a rota that far ahead. So they can't tell you. If, for example, you're talking just now about a month's time, right, well, I'll come back and see you in a month's time. The first thing they'll turn around and say, oh, I don't have a rota that far ahead. So a lot of the time you have to ring them up to book that appointment.
And what number do you have for them, Alan?
Sorry?
Do you have a mobile number?
Yeah.
Okay, so in that case, what I would do in that situation is say, oh, okay, no problem at all. Shall I, when will you have your rota? And when they tell you they've got their rota, great. I'll give you a day to orientate yourself to it. Should we have a quick conversation to book that meeting when you've got your rota on the day?
Yeah,
and when
absolutely.
they say yes,
yeah.
And when they say yes, schedule that as a meeting, 10-minute meeting to talk about the next appointment. Because the thing is, if we leave stuff, if we don't connect the next interaction, like firmly, this is a date, this is when I'm going to ring, I'm going to send you a reminder, is that okay? If we don't do that, when you ring them off the cuff, they might not answer. And then you end up chasing, that starts to burn your time, starts to reduce your efficiency. Whereas if you get all that stuff in place, confirmed up front, it just makes your job so much easier, and the customers.
Yeah. That's almost where I've seen the power of Teams and Zoom coming in, is locking people into kind of interactions that are in their calendar, in their diary, that they've got that official invite that they've accepted, and they're getting reminders from their email.
Yeah.
And I think
Absolutely.
that it's a very difficult one to dodge, because I think anybody that sat down and then dialed into a Zoom or Teams meeting, whatever it may be, and the other person doesn't turn up, you put an awful lot of coins in the bank on that one.
Yeah, I agree. And getting their mobile numbers is crucial, so that if you are sitting in a meeting and someone doesn't turn up, you can drop them a quick WhatsApp message, or you can send them a voice message, or you can call them, just say, oh, I hope you don't mind, I'm sitting on the Zoom meeting waiting for you. And I don't know if you do that, but I do it all the time. If people don't, it doesn't happen very often, to be honest, but as and when people don't show, I will give them a quick call and say, oh, I hope you don't mind, I'm sitting on the Zoom meeting. And they might just be running late. Oh yeah, I'm still with a customer, or I'm still dealing with a team member. I'll be with you in 5. But that's fine, as long as you've got a way to maintain the momentum. That's the key. Good.
As long as you're in credit.
It can be a pain when you get text messages at 9 o'clock in the evening from them, though. So.
Yeah. What? Apologising or?
Yeah.
Not at all.
Or not at all. Well, yeah, and hopefully, what you'll find as you go through this cycle, remember, rule number 1, always have a reason why for your customer for you to meet them. If they're bailing on meetings, it's because your reason why is not strong enough. There's no other reason. Whatever they tell you, oh, this has happened, that's happened, the real reason is our reason why is not strong enough. Because if it's anything else, we can't fix it. The only thing we can fix is having a really strong reason why the customer should see us. Get that in place, and everything else flows, I promise you, every single time. Okay, good, excellent. So let's go now to questioning. So we're in our needs discovery phase. We've talked about listening. We know how important and vital listening is. So needs discovery, this is probably, I would say, the most important stage of our sales process. It underpins everything that we're going to do. And so what we need to do in this stage, we've already started to talk about this as part of listening, but we need to slow down. We need to open everything up. And our objective here is really to seek to understand what's going on for the customer, seek to understand. And remember this principle. So this is, a really interesting fact. Everything that you need to sell to your client is in their head. It literally is in their head. This is what I need to hear in order to be convinced to work with you, right? There's only one way that we get that out, and that is to listen and to ask the right questions, okay? To ask, we'll call them high quality questions. So before we go into the right questions, I guess one of the things that was in your sales stage, your pipeline stage, was about qualification. So we should think about qualification. So before you start open questioning, you need to think about qualifying the client, the prospect, the opportunity. And remember that, not all opportunities and sales are the same. They're not all created equal. Not all clients will buy straight away, at least, right? And so prioritizing the sales leads, opportunities is going to save us time. It's going to save us effort, money, and obviously it's going to create more bonus opportunities as part of the work we do on the territory, right? So we have to invest a certain amount of time, the right amount of time, based on the value or the quality of the lead and the opportunity. So there's lots of ways in which we can do this, and you'll have your own, but here's some examples of kind of qualifying questions. Qualify early. So, what is the challenge you're trying to overcome? What outcome are you looking for? What have you tried so far? Why is resolving this so important to you? What timeline are you working to? What's your budget for this? What reporting or data are you able to provide as we go through this as a process? How are you measuring total cost? who else are you considering? Like, what other products, what other suppliers are you considering? What attracted you to Blink? When are you looking to make a firm decision? How will you make the final decision? Who's involved? Who's part of that final decision-making unit? And so you can start to, right as you start to engage with customers around opportunities, just this qualification stage, just a sense check that the customer's serious, that the opportunity is real, and that the timeline fits with your expectation based on the amount of time you're going to invest in it. So we start with qualification early, then we can expand out from there. So I just kind of capture this as an initial qualifying piece. So I'll invite you just to have a conversation with each other. What are your initial qualifying questions that you ask? Now, a word of caution, we do have to be a bit careful here, because if we seem too intent on qualifying the customer before we've really bonded with them, it can be off-putting for the customer. So we have to do this in the right way. And it may be that this comes after you've had a really exploratory conversation, but knowing that part of that, initial scoping of the customer and the opportunity is about qualification, we should understand the principle early in our process. So I'm going to flick back to that slide in case those questions are useful. If you want to, I don't know if you want to take a screen grab of that, but feel free to do so. I'll be sending you the slide deck afterwards anyway, so you'll have the presentation. But these might be some of the questions that may be useful for you. You'll have your own as well. So just come up with, in your pairs, just come up with, I don't know, 3 qualifying questions, just 3 qualifying questions that you think are going to be useful for you as you go forward with your customers. Let me pop those back up on the screen again. We're done. We probably don't need long for this. You're probably doing this on a regular basis anyway. So we'll have 5 minutes. I'll bring you back just after 20 past. 3 qualifying questions. Okay, I'll open up your rooms and see you back here in 5. Good. Let's resume. Here we go. We're back on. So, what did we come up with? 3 qualifying questions. Who wants to?
Yeah, I've got one. What are the key issues you currently have, if any?
Okay. That last bit, Alan.
Yeah.
What's the if any bit? What's that for?
Well, I mean, it covers a range of things, because it could cover quality, it could cover service, it could cover support, it could cover price, any of those.
Okay. So I like the question. I don't think you need the if any.
No, I did think about that. Yeah.
Okay. Good question, because the if any closes at the end.
Yeah. I just suddenly thought about that.
That's all right. Good.
I think something that's sort of relevant for us is that when you qualify a question for new business, something as straightforward as, are you currently using single use? Straight away, you try and you get in the answer. You try to probe the customer and identify, are they using current single use? And then the conversation, the probe, the qualifying questions you ask subsequently after that, that's going to dictate the rest of the questions, I think, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah.
For us as a company, yeah.
So you're immediately understanding, are they currently using single use?
Well, for an ophthalmology, for 1 or 2 ways then, because we do reusable and single use. Yeah. So I think identifying that as a qualifying question to begin with, I think is a good way to start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Maggie.
Thank you. So that leads me nicely into Will's question. So who's the driving force behind this?
Yeah.
Is it money? Is it the surgeon? Based on the fact that they're already maybe using single use?
Yeah.
Why? So
yeah.
That's one of mine. There's so many, but yeah.
What's the driving force behind the need to change or the desire to change? Yeah.
That's right.
And I think going back to the desire to change, obviously you've led one of the qualifying questions, obviously, are you currently using single use?
Yeah.
But I mean, it treads on Alan's toes a little bit, but obviously, are you happy with the current supplier? Because if they turn around and say, you know what, yeah, we're happy with everything. We like the product. We like the price. Well, straight away, you're going to have to adapt your qualifying questions, aren't you?
Yeah, it's closed.
Both of those, I felt were quite closed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you kind of preempted yes and two yes and no answers there. So maybe thinking about how we position this, opening it up a little bit.
Yeah, so we're going to come to that next, Tim. So what we're going to look at next is the structure of questions and how we use open questions. But I can understand, actually, right at the start, you want to understand if the opportunity is with single use or reusable. So that's,
Well, yeah, you're fact finding, aren't you, Justin?
you are, Alan. Yeah, and it may be,
Because bearing in mind that, you know, at this initial stage, you're in your very early stages, aren't you?
yes, yeah. So it may be that a way to position it, Will, is to say, what's your preference in the trust over single use versus reusable? And then they'll either answer one or the other, or they might just give you some explanation. Well, actually, we've got a combination. We've got this department prefers this, or these people prefer that, or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? But to ask it in a way that kind of opens it up could give you perhaps a bit more of an open answer from the customer. Yeah, good. What else did we come up with in terms of qualifying? Because remember, what we're trying to do is we're trying to assess is this real?
Well, I've got here. My first one was, aside from specific instruments,
Yeah.
What do you need to achieve?
Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
And
What do you need to
let them
achieve as
talking.
part of this? Yeah.
Let them just feed me the information.
Yeah.
Again, feeding a bit of that. Is it just this particular product that you're looking at? I mean, that gives you the opportunity to talk about other products. You know, you might be going in for one reason, and it could be a reason of a certain product, and then you can obviously explore that. You can and use the opportunity to potentially supply more products.
Yeah. Thanks, Barry. Good. And remember that. So is it just this one product? Again, it's a closed question. So yes or no.
Yeah.
You could say, what's the scope of the project in terms of how many products you're looking at?
Justin, on that sort of note, does it always have to be an open question?
No.
Do you see what I mean? Because to find out, are you currently using single use? I know you could, but it is a sort of black and white answer, really, isn't it? I suppose they could say some single use, but you know what I'm trying to say is, does it always have to be open? Can some questions be closed because that's sort of the nature of the question, if that makes sense?
So here's how, if you think about the sales process as a funnel, at the start of the process, you ask open questions, and towards the end of the process, you ask closed questions. That's how you think about it. So at the start, you're opening everything up. You want to get it all out on the table, figure out what's what, who's
so I'm going straight for the jugular, aren't I?
You're going straight to closed questions, right?
Yeah.
Later on, when we want the customer to give us an answer, is this something you'd like to pursue? Is there an opportunity for us to work together here? I want a yes, right? But early in the process, I want all the information I can get. So later on, we absolutely close things down, but early on, we open it up. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Good.
I ask you one question, Justin. I think on your qualifying, and it's how you handle this. Sometimes you've got, who else are you considering?
Yeah.
And what kind of reaction or emotions do you think we should be showing, that if somebody says, yeah, we're looking at you, but we're also considering supplier X and supplier Y, when you've got that information, which for us gives us some insight, what expectation do you think the customers, or what response to that kind of questioning do you think you're really looking for, or do you think the customer reacts to?
So I think it's an important question to gauge the customer.
Yeah.
And you'll know whether it's the right question to ask, depending on how, and if you've got a customer that's really open with you, you've got good dynamic, you follow the process, it feels right, there's good connection, that's a question you can ask. If the customer's defensive, if you found it difficult to connect, if there's a wall there, you might avoid asking that question, because it might trigger a bit of defensiveness in the customer. But in terms of the response, for me, it's when you're talking about a competitor, we keep it really clean, keep the questions really clean, really objective, factual, right? It's only when we're talking about our own portfolio we want to start to talk about how will it feel if you're able to achieve those goals you want, and how, what are the things that we can do to make this such a standout experience for you, and all that stuff. So keep it really factual, neutral with competitors. Keep it really highly engaging and emotional with your own questions.
Yeah. So I think sometimes it's a little bit of a, you can fall into then discussing the competitor.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think that's probably I think sometimes it's on that question, who are you considering? And then maybe follow up with a why. Why else would you be considering them, or what's drawing you to them?
Yeah.
But for me, then it's probably leaving it at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Justin, I'm just reminded that when we first spoke online, you gave me this great question that kind of dovetails that. And as far as we asked them, if we win the business, if you know this question, if we have won the business and we are 6 months down the line, what have we actually done? What have we done in those 6 months to keep that business? Suddenly it's all, you get the answers you want, when they don't really do the competitor stuff.
Yeah. It's we call it that, the question structure, thanks Jamie, is a presupposition. So if you sometimes you can future pace the customer and they'll give you an answer they hadn't thought of just from the structure of the question. So if in that example, if you had chosen us as a successful supplier and we were 6 months down the line, or 6 months from now, and we'd exceeded your expectations, what would have happened? And they'll tell you. Surprisingly effective. You just asking them to almost imagine. It's interesting when you use the word imagine, it unlocks something in people's minds. They do start to imagine. So you just say, imagine if we were 6 months down the line, we'd over delivered on everything that you had in your project, what would have happened? And they'll just start to tell you. Be really surprised at how effective that sort of questioning structure is. Good. So qualifying questions. If I could ask you, one of Tim's folders is going to be key customer questions. If you could upload your qualifying questions to that key customer questions folder, and make sure that the title of them is qualifying questions, because we're going to separate qualifying questions from our high quality questions. Okay. Qualifying questions, I'm making a note so I can remember. Qualifying and high quality questions. Okay, good. Thanks, guys. Keep working on these. You'll for every opportunity they'll be slightly different. So just keep working through them. Right, let's power on. So we're into questions. Let's just cover questioning structure. So we have to understand the difference between 3 types of question structure. Those 3 questions are open, closed, and probing. Okay, open, closed, and probing. Now, probing, let's cover probing first. No, we're going to cover closed first. I haven't got a slide on closed because you don't need it. Because closed questions are default questions. We always ask closed questions. So is it, are you, can you, did you, should you, would you, all of that, closed questions. And for some reason, most of us, me included, unless we really concentrate, we default to closed questions. It's almost, like a natural product of what we do. So we have to remember to ask different types of questions. And the 2 types of questions that we're going to look at in more detail are open questions and probing questions. So before we go to open questions, probing questions are when you've asked an open question, which we'll come to next. You've asked an open question and you want to go deeper, right? Because you haven't quite got the answer that you want. It is as simple as doing one of 2 things, saying either, tell me more about that. Just tell me a bit more about that, right? So you don't, if you say to a customer, what is it you're looking to achieve as part of this project? Then they say, I don't know, they give you some answer that's a bit random and you think that's not really what I wanted. You just say, can you tell me a bit more, please? Tell me a bit more. Tell me a little bit more. Or you say to them, that's really interesting. What else is important? So you said that you're trying to achieve that. What else is important when we think about this project or this opportunity or whatever it is they've called, the work that you're doing with them, okay? So when you've asked a question and you haven't got the answer, that's when you probe. You go a bit deeper because you've got to unlock the real need or the real opportunity. And it's as simple as tell me more or what else is important. And there's a principle in root cause analysis. And the principle is y to the power of 5. So if you ask the same question, I wouldn't call it why, I'd call it what else is important to the power of 5. If you ask that 5 times, normally that equals root cause. And that's what root cause analysis is. Basically, you say, what else, what else, what else, what else, what else, 5 times. And on the 5th time, they go, actually, it's this. Okay. So you can learn that from, it works with customers as well. So this is about probing into the depths of the customer's real desires and needs. But before we go to probing, we need to understand how to structure an open question, okay? The easiest way to structure an open question is to remember to start the question with either what or how. What or how. If you do that, if you make sure every question you ask starts with what or how early in the sales process, it will be an open question. Okay? As long as you don't tag on a closed question to the end of it. And that is surprisingly common. So you go, so what else is important to you, if anything? Right?
Thank you, Justin.
Well, no, and it's not just that, Alan. It's what else is important to you. I'm just thinking about other times I've heard this. So what else is important to you? And you might tag on something like, is it this? And that you've gone open question, close it. Open question, close it. So just remember, ask an open question and just let it land. So what else is important to you? Stop. How are you measuring this? Stop. Not, is it just cost? Right? How are you measuring this? Is it just price? No. How are you measuring this? What else is important to you? So we're just structuring the question with what or how and leave it open. Now, what you probably will also be thinking is, why hasn't he mentioned why? Why hasn't he mentioned why? The reason I haven't mentioned why yet is because why, as a question, naturally evokes from most of us a defensive response. So if I say to you, what are the characteristics of that product? What are the characteristics that make you choose your current product? Or what are the things your current product does that are the reason you chose it? Versus, why are you using your current product? If I say to you, why are you using your current product? I could start to go, right, here's all the reasons why. And I get defensive. Well, actually it does this. Actually it does that. Actually, we've had really good experience. Actually, we really like the rep. Actually, all that, I start to defend my decision. And it's purely because the question has triggered in me a defense mechanism that I don't even realize exists. So we have to be really careful with the why question. It's not to say we can't use it, but we have to use it selectively and with precision. And so we will use the why question in a couple of occasions. One is we would use it in reverse. What does that mean? What that means is that if we were at a stage of the process and we were going to say to the customer something along the lines of, so, you know, we're at this point in the project, it's all going really well. Remind me again, why is it important for you to work with us and make this successful? And then the customer will use that defensive response to defend you and your work. But we're using it to our advantage, not to trigger a defense mechanism in the customer that works against us. Does that make sense? So we use why in a powerful way to get the customer to come on board with us. The second reason we might use it is to unlock the customer's passion and meaning for their work. So remember, one of the early questions we asked in our session was, why is being successful so important to you? So you start to defend why you want to do what you do. So for a customer who might say, wow, you know, I really like the work you do in your department. You know, why are the standards that you've set in place so important to you? Or why is being successful in the trust so important to you? Why is this initiative and getting it right and us helping you to deliver this project so important to you? And the customer, all of a sudden you use it in the right frame of reference, and the customer is channeling their why really powerfully. But we have to ask that question in the right context. And very often you might, if you find like the customer's gone frosty on you really quickly, you might have just triggered something by asking a why question in the wrong context. You can undo it, but best to be aware of it in advance. So you just keep all of the questions clean with what or how, unless you want to ask a why question that then gets the customer going in a positive way. Okay. There is a magic question, or there is structure that gives you kind of answers that are really useful. And it will link back to some of the points that we discussed earlier. But magic questions let me give you some examples. They're questions that can be really powerful if you get to a position where you feel a little bit locked in or stuck with a customer, and they say, well, we're happy with this, we're happy with that, and you kind of feel like it's perhaps going down a bit of a one-way street. This question unlocks opportunity. So you would say something like, if you could change one thing about your current supplier, solution, product, department, whatever, what would it be? And it cuts out all the noise, all the other stuff that's going on, and goes, vroom, what's the one thing? If there was one thing you could change, what would it be? Because you're presuming that there's one thing that could change, right? You're making that presumption, because nobody's perfect. Nothing's perfect. If you could change one thing, what would it be? Another way to shape that question: if I could do one thing to help, or if I could do one thing that would convince you, or if I could do one thing that transformed this, what would it be? So we're just zeroing in now. This is just, we either want to unlock an opportunity, or we want to just really get the customer fully engaged with the question. And then I talked about the word imagine earlier. It really does unlock opportunity. So you might say, imagine if you could create your own solution, if you could create your own ideal single-use product, what would it be able to do? And then if they describe something that you've got in your portfolio, you are away, right? Well, ideally we'd have, a single-use instrument that was just as reliable as a reusable. Interesting, right? So, because these are the sorts of things that come up when you ask questions like that. And then that really nicely aligns you to be able to then position things based on the answers that you've got from the customer. Now, there's lots of ways to ask these different questions. I'm going to talk you through a structure, like a process flow of questions that hopefully is going to be useful for you. Then I'm going to give you some time just to create some questions, then we'll wrap up and close. So there's this needs discovery process that we can use if we want to follow a structure, and we call it the core model. So the C is current. So what's missing from your current system, solution, trust? Okay, what's missing? How long has it been like this? What have you tried so far? So there's your current bit. What's the current situation, right? The O then is the outcome. How would you like it to be? What difference would that make? How much might that be worth to the trust, or how much value would that create if you could get to that outcome? Then we go to the R, which is right time. So you're trying to, is it the right time? How urgent is it? What's your time scale? Why is now a good time for us to be looking at this, or for you to be looking at this? And then the E is just kind of cover. Have I covered everything? So what else is important? Who else is involved? What haven't we covered? And so you can use this as a structure just to kind of make sure that you're kind of going, okay, current, outcome, right time, everything. Just keeps it present in your mind. And then, of course, we summarize. So at the end of our needs discovery questions, listening, answering, discussion, we then summarize what we've heard. Okay, would it be okay if I just summarize what I've heard and we summarize? Okay, and that takes us to the end of this stage. Okay, got that twice for some reason. That's good. Okay, so we've got a number of things going on here. You've talked about your qualifying questions already. We've looked at questioning structure, opening, closed, probing. Probing simple. What else? Tell me more. Really simple. Open questions. What or how? And then we've got our magic questions. If I could change one thing, if I could do one thing, which kind of just unlock and open things up again. And then we've got our core model, where we just want to follow a structure that gives us some really nice kind of flow of questions where the customer works through, you know, current situation, outcome, right timing, have we covered everything, summarize. So really there's a few things in there that are going to help you really get deep into the needs of your customers. Okay, so let me give you some time just to discuss that, talk through it. So if you can hear, I've got the ice cream van just going past my house, but I won't be stopping for a 99 or anything. Right, let's give you the chance. So we'll give you, let's split the difference. I'll give you 7 minutes. Then we'll come back, check in, do a final wrap up, ready for the next session, and we will close by 5. So open the rooms. So discuss your high quality questions, capture some that have really resonated with you, and then we'll come back and take some feedback. Guys, quality questions. Quality questions. What? Share with me some of your insights. What did you discuss?
So what me and Kat, well, I tried to flip that question back round about are you currently using single use to be more of an open question?
Yeah.
Because I think that is still a high quality question. I think with our line of business, you want to straight away identify. So tell me if this is open or closed. Right. So how are your instruments or sets currently processed?
Yeah, that's good. That's open. Yeah, that's open.
Hey, we got there.
Well
Perfect.
done.
So something along those lines, I think in our line of work, that really then following what they say will dictate the rest of the questions, I believe.
Yeah, because they'll either be disposing of them, or sterilizing them, right? Yeah. Great, perfect, perfect. Well, yeah, great.
We put, why is it so important for you to get the right instruments? And that's from a flip side, and it could be having problems with the quality of the instruments. Why is it so important? You sort of know what the answer is going to be.
Yeah. What else is important to you?
Unhappy surgeons equals an unhappy list, a waste of money, a waste of time, a waste, you know, but it's an open question that they're going to give you a number of answers for.
Yeah, nice.
I've got one, Justin. If there's one thing that you could change about your current supplier, what would it be?
Yes, yeah, good.
Because again, that goes back to the question about quality, service, deliveries.
Yeah.
And it's just opened the question up for them to reply.
Yeah. Good. Thank you, Alan. Yeah, good. I like it. Really good questions there. I love the Will. I like the how question, because it naturally leads you then into, if they say, well, they're processed like this, you can naturally say, and how does that work for you?
Yeah. And like I said, with our line of work, it really does then open the playing field and open the conversation up, and you can dictate the rest of the questions you're going to ask from that response from your customer, aren't you?
Yeah. And all I'd say is just keep bringing yourself back to what and how, because you'd be surprised how often this happens by default, where you might find yourself going, you know, even if you say, you know, how are you processing your instruments at the moment? And they go, oh, right, well, this is what we're doing with disposing. And then you might go, okay, so do you have any problems with that? And actually what you want to say is, how does that work? Or what are the challenges that you face doing that? And what are some of the challenges you face with single use? Or do you see what I mean? And you just got to keep that really broad, really open, because in these early stages, it's about getting the customer doing most of the talking. Because the more they talk, the more they'll talk themselves into creating an opportunity for you to be able to then say, okay, so that sounds quite difficult. What else happens? What impact does that have? Tell me. Brilliant, Alan. Tell me more. Yeah, exactly. Great. What else? What else have we got on this question structure?
Everyone's gone silent.
How urgent is it?
How urgent? Great. Yeah, really good. Yeah. How urgent is it that you resolve this? Yeah. How urgent? Is it? Nice. So guys, we're at 3 minutes too, so I'm conscious we're close to the end. If I could ask you to do the same with your high quality questions, if you can write those up, call them high quality questions, pop those in the key customer questions folder that Tim's created on your shared drive. So we've now got a series of them. We'll have our plans in place. We'll have our reason why statements. We'll have our insight statements. we're going to have key customer questions, both qualifying and high quality questions. So you can start to have some really valuable resources that are just going to bring you back to really high quality structure of your sales process and engagement with customers. I have this back. I'm going to send you this slide deck. This is, oh, can you actually, I'm not sharing my screen, am I? Let me share that. I have this, I call it the high quality questions bank. So here's a series of questions that you could start to consider implementing as part of your process. So you'll see, what targets are you measured on? What are your immediate priorities? What's your highest priority this year? Which is more important, generating time or money? What's the biggest challenge you need to overcome? How can I help your team get to the next level? So there's all sorts of stuff in here. There's all sorts of questions in here that might be useful for you as well. Okay. Right, as we wrap, just think key takeaways. What are your key takeaways from today's session? You'll all been taking notes. Just take a moment just to gather those key takeaways. And remember our accountability discussions. So if you could continue these between the workshops, check in with each other once a week so that you're just focusing on how you're implementing the content from these workshops. Keep refining the content as well. Keep refining your plans, your impact statements, your reasons why, your questions, and practice, practice with each other, practice with your customers. Think about dates. What's the schedule that you're going to meet and review? What are your key actions? How can you best help and support each other as you're implementing, developing, and growing through the program? Brilliant, 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 brilliant. Right, guys, we've had 3 hours on Zoom and nobody's missed a beat. So thank you all so much. I know this is not easy. We've got about 30 seconds. Oh no, it's 5 o'clock. I'd love to just invite feedback, questions, anything that's on your mind before we close.
Just one thing I've got here is, so I've got as a takeaway, the bank for feeding in is impact statements.
Yeah.
Qualifying questions.
Yeah.
High quality questions.
Yes.
Those are the 3.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll look to create the bank of those. I'll share tomorrow morning, folks, where it is on the shared drive. What we'll do is might just put a little template together so we can populate those. And then what we'll look to do is bring those together into a single format so we can share those nice and easily.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim. That's great.
Thanks for that, Justin. That was great.
Yeah,
Thank
you.
Excellent.
Good. My pleasure. Thank you, guys. Again, really appreciate you. I know it's a full afternoon on Zoom, and I really appreciate you staying fully engaged all the way through. Thanks, guys. Have a brilliant rest of the month, and I'll see you next month in July, about 3 weeks' time, for our next session.
England might be in the semi-finals next time we speak.
Well, fingers crossed, right?
I know.
Fingers crossed. Enjoy the Euros kick-off at the weekend. Yeah.
I know.
Enjoy. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Yeah, take care, all. See you later.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.